Hello friends, today we are going to discuss about the one of the most important Indian uh, political activist leader, or we can say that thinker. He was Dadabhai Naroji, who was born in 1825 and he was died in 1917. Friends, before having any discussion about the any idea of the Dadabhai Naroji, we will discuss about the various phases of his life in a brief introduction, such as Dadabhai Naroji was born on September 4, 1825. He died on June 30, 1917. He was a distinguished figure known as the Grand Old Man of India and also the unofficial ambassador of India. He spent his life in the various fields, including the as a political leader, a merchant, a scholar, and also a writer. And he held the presidency of the Indian National Congress for three times, from 1886 to 1887, 1893 to 1894, and then further in 1906 to 1907. His works include the Poverty and the Un-British Rule in India, which is one of the most extensive and the famous work written by the Dadabhai Naroji. This work basically deals with the drain theory of the Dadabhai Naroji, in which he basically discussed about the uh, draining of the various uh, wealth, including the drain of the Indian mines and also Indian wealth, such as uh, various materialistic things and the raw materials also. So, the purpose of this book was to uh, expose the objective of the British rule over India in terms of draining of the wealth of the Indian people. Nauroji was affiliated with the Liberal Party and held a membership in the Second International alongside notable figures like Kautsky and Likhanov. His contributions includes the establishment of Dadabhai Naroji Awards for services to UK-India relations, that was inaugurated by the Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg in 2014. In addition to this, Nauroji received uh, a posthumous honors, being depicted on Indian postage stamps in 1963, 1997, and 2017 also, which basically cemented his enduring legacy in the annals of history. Friends, now we are going to discuss uh, about the biography of Dadabhai Naroji. His early education, he was born in Navsari, which is a place in Gujarat. He belongs to a Zoroastrian family. He was educated at the Elphinstone School, and his career includes as a Diwan, minister to the Maharaja of Baroda in 1874. He founded the Rahnumai Mazdayan Sabha in 1851 to restore his own religion that we already know was Zoroastrian. And he also established the Gujarati fortnightly publication called as Rast Guftar in 1854, and he founded the Zoroastrian Trust Fund of Europe in 1861. He also directed and launched the London Indian Society in 1865. He also helped to establish the East India Association in 1867, and he became the Prime Minister of the Baroda in 1874 and member of the Legislative Council of Bombay in 1885 till from 1885 to 1888. His political career also includes a member of the Indian National Association before the founding of the Indian National Congress. He was elected the president of Indian National Congress in 1886. He also published his famous book in 1901, which is Poverty and the British Rule in India. He was elected as the first British Indian MP for the Liberal Party in Finsbury Central in 1892. He also advocated for the Indian interest in the British Parliament. Friends, now we are coming to discuss about the Naroji's Nauroji's political and the economic ideas. He was a nationalist. Nauroji basically discussed a kind of nationalist ideas. Those were related with the economics and the politics, which were basically leading to the leading to him as a as a champion of the economic nationalism. His theory of trade also exposed the that how British colonial rule economically exploited India. Other than this, Nauroji's theory also created a sense of economic nationalism by exposing the wealth drainage and the economic self-sufficiency, uh, and challenging colonial exploitation were also emphasized in his economic ideas. His works basically inspired the nationalist movement for economic emancipation or the increment. So, Naroji's journey started from economic nationalism to advocating for a political self-rule. Now, we have to understand that what is his drain theory. England's debt to India at the East India Association gathering in London 1867. So, in starting or initially, Nauroji argued that India was being economically drained and indirectly contributing to England's prosperity, because we know that uh, England was, or the Britishers were ruling over India, and they also imported many of the important wealth, such as raw materials, intellectual minds of India, and many more things. Those who were actually contributing to the England's economic prosperity. So over time, Naroji expanded on his ideas and devoted his life to spreading the awareness about the drain theory. So nationalists like M.G. Ranade, Bholanath Chand, and R.C. Dutt also criticized the British imperialism for wealth drain from India. Now, kind of adaptation and the popularization, as we know that Nauroji's theory gained traction in the national media and was eventually adopted by the Indian National Congress in 1896. Finally, the theory attributed India's famines and poverty to the economic drain imposed by British rule. So, Nauroji's make responsible to the Britishers for the famine and the poverty because they drain the Indian wealth. That's why he considered that mainly British rule is responsible for India's famine and poverty. Nauroji also exposed the nature of the drain. I mean, what kind of drain it was? It was economic drain. It was the primary that was the primary cause of India's poverty. It also involved the direct loss of the wealth and the physical transfer of the national produce. That also resulted in loss of employment and income within India. So the tax collected in India was sent to Britain instead of being reinvested locally. So all the wealth that is also collected in the form of tax were imported to the Britain, and leading to the depletion of the Indian capital and hindering its production capabilities. So what were the consequences of such kind of drain of wealth? Let us discuss. That is, the drain of wealth actually prevented India from accumulating capital and also create a hurdle in its prosperity. So Nauroji highlighted the link between drain, capital formation and income generation. He argued that if India retained its resources, it could raise taxes and utilize them for the country's development. So Nauroji is basically uh, draw the consequences that actually highlighted the India's poverty, and also drain of the capital and the capital formation, and also lack in income generation at the local level. He argued that if India could retain its resource, or if India could possess its if India could having its own resource, then it might be possible that India could raise more taxes, and it could utilize them for the country's development. So, uh, friends, you know that Naroji was utilizing the sorry. Uh, Naroji basically uh, was exposing the kind of drain that actually done by the Britishers during their rule. So again, what he seen that uh, a kind of he analyzed the rule, I mean the nature of the rule of the British, and he stand against such kind of uh, character of the rule that was done by the Britishers in India. So he continued what he analyzed, that kind of continued exploitation by the Britishers of the Indian wealth. So despite effort to raise awareness about the drain theory, British policies of exploitation and suppression in India remained unchanged. Dadabhai Naroji became increasingly disillusioned with British rule and began openly expressing his disapproval. He also denounced the British rule. He questioned the fairness of the British policies and highlighted the disproportionate burden that was placed on the Indian population for the benefit of the United Kingdom, or the we can say that British people. He criticized the one-sided relationship between Britain and India because he seen the relationship of India and Britain as a master slave relationship, rather than uh, he analyzed that Britishers were actually using India or Indians as a slave by draining their wealth, by keeping them suppressed, rather than their continuous promises of creating a kind of prosperity in India. They were uh, they had created a kind of master and slave relationship. So he also exposed to British protectionism. In a way, Naroji exposed Naroji exposed the fallacy of the British claims of protecting Indian life and property. He also argued that the British government's protection was merely a means to secure and exploit Indian resources for its own benefit. Naroji came to a clear understanding of the true objectives of the British colonization in India. He declared that the British India served the interest of the Britain rather than those of the Indian population, and asserted that it was British India, not the India's India. We can see a kind of gradual shift towards the radical demands. While Naroji initially focused on raising awareness and advocating for the equitable policies, he gradually began to articulate more radical demands as he realized the entrenched nature of British exploitation in India. Friends, these two ideas, such as political nationalism and self rule, were very important in his thought. You know that once Britishers started a continued exploitation, the once the Britishers uh, were continuing their exploitation of the Indian wealth, uh, Nauroji stand against such kind of exploitation that was continuously happening over the Indian people. So he shifted his demand in terms of political nationalism. So what is political nationalism? That actually advocated by the Dadabhai Naroji. So basically he transitioned from advocating economic nationalism to calling for political nationalism and self-rule for India. He was disillusioned by the lack of reform from British authorities. Despite his efforts, he began to express sentiments of disloyalty towards the British rule. He also called for a self-government. He was in fear of the a Gandhi-like concept, which he called as self-government, because Gandhi also used the term Swaraj, but it was a little bit different. Naroji firmly asserted that self-government was the only solution to India's misery and economic gain. He seen that India could be well satisfied and well prosperous once it got a self-government, or he believed that without self-government, India would continue to suffer from impoverishment, misery, and destruction. So, the interconnection of the economic and political nationalism is recognized by the Naroji that achieving economic nationalism, including ending the drain of the wealth from India, was intrinsically linked to achieving political nationalism. He argued that Britain's political control over India allowed it to exploit Indian resources and also hindered the economic progress. He also demanded for Indian party for Indians' participation. Naroji emphasized the importance of Indians having a full share of public employment and a voice in their expenditure. He called for the Indians' participation in governance and decision making process to ensure equitable distribution of resources and address the drain issue. He also emphasized on the self-government that we already discussed. Naroji's presidency address at the Calcutta session of the Indian National Congress and highlighted the central importance of self-government or Swaraj for India. He equated the political demands of the Indian people to the desire for self-government similar to that enjoyed by the United Kingdom or its colonies. Friends, now we are going to conclude uh, the ideas or the various experiences that actually given by the Dadabhai Naroji. Uh, in conclusion, we can say that Dadabhai Naroji was a tireless and his Dadabhai Naroji's tireless struggle for India's cause continued to inspire generation until the country achieved independence in 1947, and he marked the also marked the end of the British rule in the East. However, after acquiring the political nationalism, the journey towards economic nationalism remained incomplete. Today, we must reflect on whether we have achieved self-reliance in economic matters and if the fruits of development are reaching all sections of the society. As Naroji foresaw, both economic and political nationalism are intertwined. He never seen the concept of economic and the political nationalism as a separate one, as a separate from each other. But uh, he said that the true independence cannot be attained until the welfare and the prosperity of the masses are secured. Thus, the ongoing struggle for the both economic and the political nationalism remains crucial for India's progress and fulfillment of the vision of its great leaders. That's how the ideas and the struggle of the Dadabhai Naroji's lasted an impact even till now. His impact is and his ideas are running among the people. That's why we can say that Dadabhai Naroji was one of the most important leader, thinker, notably a writer also in Indian history. Thank you.